Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road, where my guest today is legendary football coach Ernie Bojrab. Ernie has been such a blessing to my life. Our daughters played club volleyball together, and in those moments we have shared so many things, but at one particular time, he shared with me what he is going to share with you today. He calls it his 10 Dramandments, and they are the 10 commandments how to avoid drama in female sports. And Ernie's insights are powerful. You will not want to miss it. Ernie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Your hairstyle looks as good as always.
Yeah, yours is really good as well. I've always admired that in you.
Ernie, talk about your coaching career. You were a teacher in the public school systems, and you spent a lot of time at Northrop, and you coached a lot of things.
I started out coaching wrestling and football. Coached football for 15 years as an assistant, and then as a head coach for 4 years at Northrop High School. Coached wrestling for 6 years, 1 year as a head coach, and baseball as an assistant coach 1 year. We ended up going to semi-state that year in 1981.
With Coach Stavretti?
Coach Chris Stavretti, yes.
My dad used to talk about the Stavretti brothers.
Yes.
From his playing days.
He was an outstanding person, an outstanding coach, and it was just an honor to be able to be a part of his organization at that time. The kids worked hard, it was a great work ethic, and it was a great experience for me to be a part of that. And then I retired from Northrop after 32 years of teaching there, and then took on my substitute teaching gig at Bishop Dwenger, and Chris Schwarzkopf eventually wanted me to help out with the program. So I started on the
football program.
For the football program, and eventually helped them with the freshman team. I did that for 2 years until he asked me on board in 2015 when he asked me to be an interim coach for him when he wasn't able to serve.
He had cancer and ends up coming out on the other side, but in the meantime, they moved the Battle of the Bishops to the beginning of the 2015 season. I think you lost by 8, and it could have gone the other way. And then you run the table,
right,
and win the state championship, like a movie.
It was, according to the script, it was very much a story to be told. We were very fortunate because of the kinds of kids that we had, the assistant coaches that we had at the time. We were pretty discouraged after that loss. But I think I mentioned to you before in conversation that there was an assistant coach that had made a comment when we got back to the gym after that loss, after that opening loss, and said there's nothing wrong with being a 14-1 state champion. And that proved to be true that year.
Oh, it was awesome. And God did amazing things through that as well. But you and I traveled to club volleyball tournaments together for years. We watched practices together for years. That's how I learned so much about the incredible coaching wisdom that's inside you. And we got to talking about how female athletes are a little bit different than male athletes. And you told me about the 10 Dramandments. And talk about where this came from.
When my daughter Abigail was in school at St. Charles, we would be experiencing innocent annoyances with her interaction with her friends during that time. Didn't think much of it until time went on and it got to be the 7th and 8th grade where those innocent annoyances turned into premeditated drama. And it was at that point that we knew,
awesome.
I knew it was a concern and needed to be addressed.
And how did you come up with these?
Well, I sat down and tried to organize my thoughts from what I had seen and what I had heard and what I saw my daughter experiencing. So I did that, and then I tried to put them forth in a way that was meaningful to her and hopefully maybe even others if they saw fit. So, you know, being in a parochial school, Catholic school, I put them in the form of the 10 Dramandments to mirror the 10 Commandments, where, you know, the 10 Commandments are trying to prevent sin, and with the 10 Dramandments, we're trying to prevent drama.
That's awesome. You ready to go through them?
Okay.
Stop the drama and grow up. Stop making something big out of something petty. Misinterpreting a text, a spoken word, a tone, a glance, a stare. Who's talking with whom? Who's sitting with whom at lunch?
I think that's a matter of maturity. And even though they're 7th and 8th graders, and people might say that's just the nature of the beast, I didn't accept it. I think that the responsibility of a parent, you need to acknowledge those shortcomings and to deal with them and let them know that they need to get past those sorts of things and deal with them in a different way than it was being done, because it would proliferate into more and more problems, where a petty thing would turn into a larger problem.
Drama begets drama, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's kind of majoring in minors rather than majors, isn't it? I mean, they'll focus on one little thing and twist it and make it a big thing and just keep perpetuating it.
Very small details will turn into a mountain of trouble, and it snowballs. Where even when a comment is made to one person, especially if you think you trust that person will tell someone else. And then with social media, you know, you almost don't have a chance, you know, to have the confidence of anyone.
Yes.
So it's really a challenge for the kids these days.
Petty in Hebrew is the first of 5 stages of becoming a fool. So it's naive, gullible, simple, and it's interesting that when we talk about petty, that's kind of what that is right there.
That makes a lot of sense.
Number 2, you are friends with or friendly to everyone. What were you seeing?
I was seeing the girls forming a lot of cliques and isolating others from their group, excluding others, and that's one of the worst things that you can do, obviously, about treating other people. And then from there, other problems grow too, and it's nothing but meanness and hurt that's involved, and I certainly didn't want my daughter to be a part of that.
I never really heard the term misery loves company until the automotive editor of a huge newspaper used it in my response to, he was interviewing me, and he asked me what cars are very difficult to sell. And when I explained to him about, at that time it was the DeLorean, they had mechanical issues and they were very difficult to sell. Well, a reader writes in and says, why would he say that about my DeLorean? My DeLorean's great. And the guy says, the editor writes back, for anybody else in the Misery Loves Company group, you know. But there's something about that. So let's just say 2 or 3 girls aren't playing as much as everybody else. What are they going to do?
They're going to commiserate.
Yes.
They're going to form their own camp so that they can bounce each other's woes off each other, and they find comfort that way. And sometimes it justifies how they feel.
And then what's the risk of 2 or 3 girls that are killing it and they're getting all the accolades and the stats?
Well, you know, they start to think probably that they're better than others, and they form their own group too without the right kinds of reasons for that. And so then you have those kinds of groups just pounding one another back and forth, and problems are created that way.
And there's something about us, male and female, we want to be part of a team, we want to be part of a group, but when we have those factions within a team, that's not going to help the team be successful.
And you see it not only just in a setting in sports, you see it in the classroom especially, and quite frankly with adults as well. Unless you're aware of it and you know that it's something that you don't want to happen, you need to be conscious about it because of the hurt that it can bring to others by excluding them and isolating them outside of your own group.
Well said. You're a wise man. You tell Pam you are a wise man.
I will.
Number 3 of Ernie Bojrab's 10 Dramandments, how to help female athletes and coaches be successful. Number 3, never speak or repeat something negatively or critically of others. You can always expect to have it repeated to someone else, no matter how much trust you have in who you're talking with. She's just awful.
And then it goes to the next person that trusts her, and then her best friend hears it, and then it gets to social media, and then it becomes a full-blown problem. In this day and age especially, you know, the confidence that you need to keep has to really be guarded. And a lot of times those sentiments and those comments are made in the heat of the moment.
Yes.
And it's not really heartfelt, and you have no control over it after it's released, you know, on that network of gossip and hearsay and the internet.
Ah, man, I'm trying to edit about a situation that was just like that. Let's just say a young lady was having a very successful service run in a volleyball practice, and a girl that's getting aced a little bit does say something under her breath, but didn't really mean it. Like at the end of the day, they really like each other, but she was feeling threatened a little bit, and she wasn't performing, and the thing that came out of her mouth was a little demeaning toward the other girl, and they got to go get that hashed out, because 2, 3 girls hear that around her. And then what do, Ernie? They immediately turn around and they tell the ones closest to them, they tell those close, and literally it makes its way around the court.
It's like a prize. You got the scoop on someone.
Yes.
And it's because that it was a thoughtless comment at the time. It's done with high emotions usually, and it gets so blown out of proportion that all the problems erupt from there, and it's senseless. It's a problem that doesn't even need to happen.
Amen. Number 4 of the 10 Dramandments. Be more respectful or tolerant of things about others that are different from what you may like or want.
Out of others.
Yeah.
Yes. We have to teach our kids, I believe, to be tolerant of others when they're different. And we're going to find that out, obviously, throughout our whole life, more and more in any kind of setting. You know, on the volleyball court, different skill levels. In school, different uniforms or clothes that they might wear, different hair do.
To have a different hair.
I know. That's why I like you so much, because I can relate to you. But the difference is they take them a step farther. And since it's not the same as they want or expect out of others, they start isolating them and exclude them from their clique. And then the problem, again, it just gets bigger and bigger.
I've had several people through Restoration Road where they share their stories, and that happened to them at a young age, and it leads to low self-esteem, and in many cases it leads to illegal activity and prison, and it's almost like that was just spoken into their lives everywhere they went, even by adults at times, and it can be devastating.
It's often a spark that puts them on a certain path that is not very productive for them. And you talk about self-esteem, as parents also, as coaches. You try to teach those you are in charge of self-esteem and also self-confidence. And I think there's a difference there, because self-esteem is believing that you are good, and self-confidence is still believing you're good when someone tells you you're not, or you're losing at something as well.
That's powerful. I love that delineation. Number 5 of the 10 Dramandments by Ernie Bojrab. How to make female athletes and teams successful. Always be humble. Don't brag or show off. Put others before yourself. Build others up to make them feel worthwhile and important.
The first 5 of those really have to do with how one person relates to another person. And I think the number 1 feature of a person's character is humility. That's where I begin with anyone, as far as learning about them, who they are, and what they're about, what they stand for as well. When I see someone with a sincere humbleness about them, I know that there's a good person behind that face, and I use that as a marker. Very much so when I encounter other people. And not only to stop there, but also to build others up as well, and not finding things that are negative or wrong about them, but finding the things that are positive and good and build them up. And people don't realize that when you do that, you make yourself look good as well. Mm-hmm. That's what I admire about you. Whenever I see you or I'm with you, you're always building me up, you're always building others up, and that's a virtue that you're blessed with.
Well, you do the same thing. First of all, anybody that's walking through when I'm with you, hey, coach, you changed my life. Or a guy who knows a guy, we can get anything done. When I'm with Ernie, we can get anything done. Humility is really a hallmark of Scripture. Jesus said that he was humble in heart. Humility means to bend the knees of your heart. In the Greco-Roman world 2,000 years ago, it was a negative word, and Paul and Jesus reclaim it as a positive word. It meant like dusty, slave-like, and anava in Hebrew literally to make yourself lower than whoever you're with. And you're right. I mean, there's something powerful about that. Like, you're drawn to that. Instead of like pushing people towards your agenda, you're actually pulling them towards you. But it's not because you have an agenda other than to lift those people up.
I think that might be one of the largest concerns I have with today's culture, not only in society, but in sports as well, where we are so focused with building ourselves up to honor ourselves rather than honoring the game or someone else. And that's why we see what we see on TV a lot of times at sporting events. The antics that go on there and the focus that's taken away from the honor of the game.
Mm-hmm. And it gets exacerbated in social media. It's just like, it's almost this demand on us, an unwritten demand that we gotta show ourselves that we're the best.
As a coach these days, that adds to the things that you have to develop in young athletes as well, because when they see those things happening, they think that's what they are to do too, because they know no different.
Exactly.
And they have to figure out that it's not the right attitude, approach, or perspective of what you're doing there, playing that sport.
Number 6 of the 10 Dramandments is don't let confidence turn into arrogance.
Absolutely. You want to teach your players and your kids confidence. But there is a threat that sometimes, if it's not guided like it should be, that it can turn into an arrogant type of a situation where you think you know more than anyone else, especially with young people. When they start developing confidence with their peers, it comes off differently or wrong if they show their confidence in the wrong way. So we try to make sure that it's guided. One of the biggest examples I see of this is in the weight room. Many people don't realize that one of the benefits of weightlifting is self-confidence. People have a different image of themselves, a better self-image.
I lifted heavy last night, Coach.
I could tell you.
I wondered.
They feel better about themselves, their self-esteem, their confidence, but sometimes it goes overboard because they're not used to being able to handle the responsibilities that go along with that self-confidence. And there is a responsibility that goes along with it, and it can't cross that line.
It was a particular translation of the Bible that really got my attention, but Proverbs 3:26 says, your confidence will be in the Lord. Con, to gather, and the Latin fide, to trust. So you're actually trusting in God. It's the very person and nature of God is where your confidence should be placed. And then it frees you to not be arrogant in all those situations. Contrast that with Proverbs 3:34 that James quotes, Peter quotes. God opposes the proud or the arrogant, and he gives grace to the humble. So you're actually kicking against the goads with God when you let your confidence become arrogance. And I think it's one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a team. You get one arrogant player, one player that is exhibiting maybe an entitlement mentality, and it can take the whole thing down.
I think you said the key to crossing that line, and that is understanding the source of all of your gifts. And that's the Lord. And when you start thinking that it's all you, that's when the problems happen.
As a coach, how do you handle an arrogant player?
I try to reach their heart in a way that brings them down to earth a little bit, to let them know that there's a different perspective on how you see the world, how you see the sport, how you see your role in the sport, and what your relationships are to the others on the team. If I can reach them on a humanitarian type of a level, a lot of times they'll sit up and take notice, because oftentimes when that happens, it's because they've never heard it before from anyone else. And it gives them a chance to think about things in a different way.
That's powerful. You need to coach a lot of other teams, Ernie. Number 7 of the 10 Dramandments, don't let leadership turn into being controlling.
That's the other line that we don't ever want to cross. You want your players, you want your kids to grow up with leadership skills, to have that kind of a skill set to be able to take charge of their life and even lead others. But there's a fine line there that you can't cross, especially when you're talking about young people. You can't boss your peers around. You can't approach it the same way an adult would to a subordinate. And when they understand that and see that, things work out a lot better, but they have to be taught that. It's just a matter of education and knowing the right way to approach things, how to handle things. But you certainly want them to have that initiative in life to be able to lead and to have the skills to go on and take others with them in the right direction, of course.
Jesus says in Luke that, 2,000 years ago was a lot like it is today here in our Western culture. He said, you've heard that if you want to lead, you lord it over other people. And he said, not so with you. He said, if you want to lead, serve. And I think that's really the key to not becoming controlling. But that is a huge danger because everybody wants to be captain, at least, to a certain extent. Everybody wants to, at some point, be the boss. So all this is going through our young ladies' minds. And if they get a positional authority position, they may forget that all came about originally by leading by permission and serving, and then it can go into that controlling mode.
And many people will feel good about others leading them if they trust them, if they respect them. And that all has to do with the previous Dramandments, where you lift people up, you find the positive things about them, you acknowledge those things, you give them credit, you don't isolate them or expel them because of differences. And when you are able to do that, that's what people in the sports world calls buying in. That's how you get people to go out there and fight for your cause. And if they believe in you, they're going to give you everything that they got, but you've got to earn that respect. You've got to establish that relationship with them with all those little things along the way. You can't bypass those.
Powerful. Number 8 of Ernie Bojrab's 10 Dramandments: never, ever lie.
That's the basis of any relationship, is trust and honesty, because if you don't have that, you have nothing at all. It doesn't matter if it's player or coach, it doesn't matter if it's student or teacher, child or parent, it doesn't matter. You can't count on anything can't count on anything if you know that that person is capable of being dishonest or lying to you.
It's interesting how lying and stealing seem to go together. If somebody steals, they're going to lie to cover it up. If somebody lies, it seems so easy for them to eventually steal something. And I don't mean like maybe take something out of your gym bag that wasn't yours, but it might even be like stealing credit, stealing those kinds of things as well. And those things can kill a team because you're now no longer one. You're broken apart because somebody's mishandling the truth, or they're mishandling information, or they're mishandling assets.
And those kinds of things have to be recognized by a teacher, by a coach, by a parent, so it doesn't grow and cause a cancer throughout the team. They've got to be addressed. And
I agree.
And the problem, I think, a lot of times with our society is that we've lost some courage to be able to stand up to some of that. We've become such an overly sensitive society. We've become a society of victimhood all the time. And I always believe that, as far as that goes, there's two sides to that. First of all, you should be more kind to people. You shouldn't tear them down. You shouldn't bully them. At the same time, you shouldn't be so overly sensitive to something, and you should be confident enough to know that you are not defined by someone else's perspective.
Absolutely, which is maybe a fallen perspective, and just for that moment, and we blow it out of proportion. Number 9 of Ernie Bojrab's 10 Dramandments: how to help female athletes and teams be successful. Your attitude, facial expressions, voice tone, body language, and promptness of compliance should reflect your respect.
Personal experience with all of these. Okay, what's the first one?
Facial expressions.
Facial expressions. That or rolling the eyes. Rolling the eyes right away is an indication that of
I just rolled my eyes about rolling eyes. I just did it.
Disrespectful, and they're not getting the message. Voice tone. I know my kids at one point in time when they were growing up, when they had done something wrong, and I would call them on it, they would vindictively say, sorry. I said, no,
Nope.
that doesn't get it. That doesn't show any kind of sincerity, respect, or remorse for what you've done. So that matters, and it needs to be called upon too. You know, so often our parents want to be friends, our coaches want to be friends. They are afraid of confrontation. They need the strength and the courage to be able to confront the right way.
Yes.
We've got to give the kids what they need and not what they want. And it's easier said than done, but at the same time, you got to fight the battles, and you got to be able to pick the battles at the same time.
Body language and promptness of compliance.
Body language, I think that, you know, dismissing you by turning away from you is an indication that they haven't got the message like they should have, and all those little things. And then I even have promptness of action, not on your terms, on our terms. Right now, the quicker you would do something as far as reconciling a situation, it needs to be done as soon as you can. It needs to be done now, on my time and not on yours. And that's one of the biggest things that I think people miss out on.
Obedience means now, I used to tell my girls.
Exactly, and that's well put. We need to make sure that they understand that it's something that needs to be done. I guess I already mentioned it, on our terms. They'll try and challenge you on that, but it needs to be called on.
Yeah.
It needs to be called up.
And number 10 of Coach Bojrab's 10 Dramandments, I love this. You are learning your faith to live your faith. Don't be a hypocrite.
Exactly. I think that sums everything up, and that's the reason why I even put these together. And you know, I was thinking about this, and I think that it not only applies like in a Catholic school or a Christian school, I think in the public schools in a different way, maybe in a more general way, it's the same thing, where you're learning manners, you're learning teamwork, you're learning self-discipline and respect. Those kinds of things are lost arts oftentimes, and that's all part of the faith that you should carry within you to be Jesus-like towards others, to be kind and caring towards others, lifting them up as well. It might be more indirect in a public school setting, granted, but especially in a Christian school, is more direct, it's more literal. And to see them learning from the book the things that they should be doing out on the street, it doesn't always correspond, and that's being hypocritical, and that's something that is a problem, and it needs to be acknowledged, and it needs to be corrected oftentimes.
Amen. Ernie, thank you so much for being with us today. You are a legendary coach. You have impacted thousands of people, either directly or indirectly, in our community and beyond, and I am really thankful for you and your friendship.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Dane Cruz. I'm the Family Connections Pastor at County Line Church of God, and join us next week for the Restoration Road.
The Road.